Alright, you know what? Since we've already been doing it for this, we're just gonna keep going in order of, when all of these shows finish, just to keep consistency, which I believe they are mostly in order right now. So we're gonna go with Hana-Doll next. This is... I don't know what this is. I saw a lot of pretty boys on the cover, so maybe it's an idol show or just like a romance thing. Let's find out what it is.
Not gonna lie, I felt like I was gonna fucking fall asleep during that introductory thing. So boring. Just introduction after introduction after introduction with really nothing interesting to it. Honestly, the tone is a little bit more serious than you expect for the genre, so I was interested at first a little bit because I'm like, what's going on here? It's a little moody, it's a little more serious, a little more somber. And I looked it up, and it's probably because of the premise of this being like a bit more of a sci-fi-y idol show. But I don't care to get to the sci-fi-y stuff with this, whatever the premise is. Because it's just so boring. At first I thought it was going to be like, oh, these guys are just all going to get rejected and have to claw their way back to the top or something through it at another agency or whatever. But then it's like, no, the producer just accepts them right away. I'm just like, boring. There's nothing here. It's boring. Also, apparently this one is so not watched by anyone that it doesn't even have a weighted score on Mal right now. It's just listed as like NA because so few people have given it a score. Wild.
Alright, Hana-Doll off the list. That was weird. Next is Your Forma. I heard some people talking about this show a little bit, but I have no clue what this could possibly be about. So let's, I guess we're about to find out.
You know what? Credit where it's due. This is a pretty decently directed show. It's despite the fact that they are very obviously not working with a lot of resources, they are doing their best to make this look interesting. Not always in the best ways. Like, there was this one shot where it just randomly cut to a low-angled fisheye lens of an interrogation table with two people on the other side of it, so it kind of just looked like it arched out. And I didn't really understand why that shot was there, other than, ooh, it's a fisheye lens. But, you know what? Credit for trying. And you know what? It's got like a certain tension to it that got me to over halfway through this first episode, when I really should have when there were multiple times in that first half where I should have just given up because absolutely fucking nonsense was happening. This is an iRobot show. Or I guess I should call this a Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep show. I believe... Is that what iRobot's based on, or is iRobot an original work? I don't remember. One's Harlan Ellison, one's Isaac Asimov. I can never remember which one's which. Anyway, it's a robots are commonplace in humanity, something, 3 laws, you know the drill. But also, it sort of expects you to know that, really. It, does the very brief title cards of the 3 laws explanation, or their version of the 3 laws at the very beginning, but it's, so fast you might not even notice it. And they call them amicus instead of robot. For some reason. Don't know why. But it's a well-directed show. The color palette, for as dull as it is, it's very consistent. I could feel intentionality behind the colors that they chose. It felt very well composed. Like, for as bland as the character designs were, they were still very crisp with like just a slight amount of detail to make them worth like being like, okay, this is like slightly better than generic. But boy, this script sucks. I first noticed something might be a little off when they're in St. Petersburg and they very deliberately decide to choose to show like someone doing like a transaction with a cashier in the background. But the cashier works like a Japanese cashier where it's like they announce, "You are paying in cash, I see." Very deliberately, like very politely and deliberately. And then they do the thing where they give you the change back on the tray, which is a very Japanese thing. Possible that they do it in Russia, but I've never heard of that. I don't know a lot about how cashiers work in Russia, but again, the change on the tray thing is a very Japanese thing, from what I know. So I saw that and I'm like, something's not quite right here. And then what really is the problem with this one is that they just don't fucking explain anything. They don't explain what the cybercrimes division is or whatever. They expect you to know what Ghost in the Shell is, probably, because I think it's riffing on that. Or it could be like riffing on Psycho-Pass, because there are definitely Psycho-Pass vibes to this for some reason. The main human character looks a little bit like Akane from that. But yeah, they really just don't explain anything about who these characters are, what their jobs are, why one of them is being arrested other than like this. The reason that one of them gets arrested and dragged in for questioning is like super fucking like superficial and just no one would fucking believe it. Other than it's like and he gets dragged in. He's in St. Petersburg, and they drag him all the way to London for this, even though he says that he has an alibi. And then they just keep him there. Probably because he's a robot, I guess. They can just do that. But, like, this Scotland Yard investigator has real Will Smith and iRobot vibes, where he's just I don't trust these fucking robots. They could, for all we know, they could break the 3 laws whenever. It's just so fucking stupid. And then, like, a character who's tangentially related to the main robot character gets assaulted, gets like stabbed by the person who, the actual culprit of the crime, and we're supposed to feel bad, I think, even though we barely know anything about this character, or the character that they're related to, or anyone in the show, really. It's just speeding along so fast and not giving you any information about anything. Which is a shame, because I think this director has potential. I don't remember if I led off with this, but this is the director of Girls Last Tour, which is one of my favorite anime. But he also did Goblin Slayer and the new Bastard remake, which are not good. So maybe he's lost his touch. But again, it's I don't think it's the director's fault. It's a well-directed show. Maybe he just didn't have enough time to really lay out what is necessary to like understand how this show works. Because this is adapted from a light novel. So maybe this is just how the light novel is. Anyway, either way, yeah, it's frustrating how little I care. I guess, is the long and short of it. I wish I cared more about this story because I think I sense potential here, but it's just not being capitalized on.
Alright, your Forma coming off the list. I actually just checked the cat site, and apparently the Lupin OVA just got subtitles for it. Actually, it's the subtitles specifically just dropped, and then there are raw files, I believe. So I'm just gonna have to piece those together and see what this new Lupin OVA is about.
Alright, well, that's definitely the most serious Lupin that I've seen so far. I just finished up Lupin the Third, Zenigata and the Two Lupins. This is a prequel to the movie that just came out in Japan. Not sure how long that's going to take to get to the States, because there's no way anyone's going to release it in theaters here. But as a prequel to that, actually, this works surprisingly well both as a prequel to a movie that's coming up and as a standalone story. In fact, I think it actually works better as just a standalone story, not without its faults, but it's more than entertaining. Again, this is very much a much more serious Lupin, centered around a terrorist, just mad bomber type kind of guy who is impersonating Lupin and just using Lupin's name to do the crimes instead of himself. And it turns into this big, massive political scheme of trickery and backstabbing and all that stuff. I also don't know when exactly this is supposed to take place. It looks, based on the characters that it's parodying of sorts, it's probably supposed to take place in like the 80s, I think, because it's well, it takes place in the Soviet Union. Well, so not Soviet Union. It is where it takes place. And there's a character named Breslin, who is like the Supreme Commander. So obviously that's a riff on Breslin, but he's got the birthmark on his face like Gorbachev did. I think Gorbachev was the one with the birthmark, right? I'm pretty sure. So they kind of just combine those two into one person. But in terms of being like a political thriller, it's pretty solid. It gets a little strains suspension of disbelief just a little bit at the end when all of the big plot is revealed, but the theme of like, again, I'm going to spoil this whole thing, so if you want to watch it, go ahead and watch it. But the theme of like the rich and powerful just getting away with political theater and then just fucking off to an island somewhere, is certainly one that resonates today for no particular reason. No particular reason that one resonates today. And also, I really liked this fake Lupin character. We never learn who he really is, even right up until he dies. But he is compelling nonetheless, or at the very least, he is charismatic in his enjoyment of the political theater. He is very much he takes the Lupin do what you want in life motto to an extreme of murdering hundreds of people for the sake of political theater. So, a very interesting contrast to Lupin of just, I keep bouncing back and forth on the pronunciation of that. I know it's supposed to be Lupin, but I keep saying Lupin because that's how it's spelled. I'm going to try and say Lupin. But yeah, really liked that dynamic. And also Zenigata as you might tell by the title, is a huge character in this, where his stoic, unbending sense of justice sort of butts up against the fact that there are a bunch of political actors who are just bending the world to their whims and just not acting out the sense of justice that they should be. And also how his sense of justice is a little too... They don't really go anywhere with this, but the implication is sort of like Zenigata isn't really getting anywhere because he is so hard-nosed about his sense of justice, whereas Lupin is a bit more freewheeling and is more... I guess it's that Lupin is more able to recognize that the big actors in this world do not abide by a sense of justice. They just abide by whatever they want to do. And so I guess it's more of Zenigata sort of being confronted with that fact and how he reacts as a result. I'm especially interested in seeing what he does in the movie as a result of that, because this is very... We don't really see his behavior change yet, but it definitely feels like that's coming as he pursues Lupin further and further down this plot. Not a whole lot else to that other than this. It's only like a 50-minute OVA. But I will say, it definitely gets real loosey-goosey with main character plot armor regarding explosions. Because again, this is like a Mad Bomber type person. And so, when Lupin and Jigen, and in many cases Zenigata, are close to an explosion, they kind of just walk away from it. Even though everyone else around them gets fucking blown to pieces. Like there's one where it's like, it's revealed that a cop was forced to wear a bomb vest, and Lupin estimates that the explosion radius is about 100 meters. And I think maybe it's because he was like slightly submerged in the staircase down to a subway that it wasn't quite that big, but it was still a big fucking explosion. And it's like Lupin and Jigen just barely managed to get inside of a car and then got flung away inside the car in the explosion. And that one was like, I don't know about that one. And then there's another one at the very end where they get blasted away just standing there by the explosion as they're running out of a building. And so it really strains credulity with how explosions work, because for non-named characters or for not main characters, these bombs are real fucking lethal. There is much more gore and viscera than I was expecting in this one. Like at the very end, one of the last bombs that goes off, you just see the bottom of a foot, like flying down the staircase. Fucking gory as shit. And also like a character's finger gets shot off essentially, or like it gets shot through, so the finger's just bloody and like pulpy, and it's just bent in the wrong direction. So this is definitely a very graphic Lupin. We also got some Fujiko titties at one point, so not all bad. So yes, this was definitely a very well animated Lupin as well. Love the color palette. It's very dark, despite most of it being white and gray. It really captures the depressing atmosphere of Not Russia very well. But even then, the colors are very well coordinated. They feel very... When there is color, it's very rich and warm and just very pleasant to look at. The action scenes are really solid. The explosions look fucking incredible. And again, like, the gore is pretty solid. A little cartoony at times. But also, I haven't actually watched videos of people exploding, so I don't know if that's what it actually looks like or not. Who can say? I'm sure some people can say, but I'm not... I don't particularly feel like doing research on that. The one huge downside visually, though, is there's basically anytime there is a crowd, it's really mediocre CG. The colors allow it to blend in well enough, but if you even look at it, it is very obviously CG background characters or CG crowd shots. Like, there's a big parade at one point, and all of that's really obvious CG. So that's not great. But that's pretty much the only thing that looks bad about this one. Otherwise, it's really solid looking. Yeah, this was a really solid OVA. Glad I decided to check it out. I'm glad I decided to become a Lupin enjoyer. I should have discussed that up top. I'm fairly new to Lupin. My first Lupin was part 5. So, definitely a late starter. And then I've seen Castle of Cagliostro. I watched a little bit of part 6, but didn't get through it because I just didn't like it very much. I saw the pilot from like the 70s, which I also didn't like very much. And God, I tried watching the Lupin versus Cat's Eye one. Was not a fan of that. Which I think I talked about in a previous seasonal wrap-up show. And then I've seen Lupin the Third, the first, which was the CG movie, which was okay. It was fine. So yes, I would say that I am slowly becoming a Lupin fan. I'm definitely a fan of Blue Jacket Lupin so far. I don't know how true this is about Lupin, but the different eras of Lupin and the different tones are sort of signified by the color of the jacket that he wears. Green is typically like the more like sort of serious, more mature Lupin of the Castle of Cagliostro's type. Red jacket is like very more like lighthearted and aloof and just whimsical sort of. Pink jacket, I believe, is like super comedy heavy and very like Looney Tunesy. And then Blue Jacket is like the newer Lupin, which I believe started with part 4, and it's a little bit more shonen adventure-y types. So kind of like Green Jacket, but a little bit more suave, I guess. A little bit more mature. And so if that is true, and that is and the blue and the jackets do actually signify something, then I would say that I am definitely a fan mostly of Blue Jacket Lupin so far. Though, again, I haven't seen a whole lot. I do need to watch more. I definitely need to watch part 4 at some point because I know people really loved part 4. I really liked part 5, so if part 4 is just part 5 but better, I'll definitely be into that. And I definitely need to watch some more movies, probably. I'm sure there's some really good movies. I need to rewatch Shabes' video on the Lupin stuff. I'll get into that. I'll do that at some point. But yeah, this was good.
Alright. Zenigata and the 2 Lupin should be Lupins, I believe. Whatever. That's complete. And where did I want to put you? We're going to put you right above Dragon Ball Daima in the number 11 spot with a decent 7. Good stuff. Alright, what's next? Next, back to the order that these are in. We're going to do a ninja and an assassin under one roof. I saw a few people talking about this one. This one's definitely a straightforward comedy series. I think the studio... Is this the Doga... No, the Doga Kobo one was something else. This is a... I know there's a big studio behind this one, but I forget who it is. Anyway, let's jump into it.
Wow, that's a lot of effort and really good animation and editing and timing for a show that I just don't really find all that funny. I watched all of the first episode at least of A Ninja and Assassin Under One Roof. And that's basically my summary of it. The humor is like very blunt and brutal. But also very, like, cold and often very mean as well. And, like, most of the punchlines just did not land with me. I was just like, wow, that was brutal. Or, wow, that was really mean. Like, I know this is definitely someone's brand of humor. But it's not mine. It's very much not mine, which is a shame because, again, as I said, there's a lot of effort behind this one. I don't know what studio this is, but whoever's doing whoever's directing it has some really strong comedic chops. It's very quick and fast-paced. It's like I could feel that, like, if I thought the show was funny, the punchlines would work. This is very much a source material problem for me because there's simply nothing that could... it would have to go, like, even further in the extremes of how much effort is put into the visuals of the jokes for it to be funny. It would have to be, like, Nichijou levels of effort to make these jokes work for me. And even then, I'm still skeptical of it because I just don't find it funny for one reason or another. It just is not my brand of humor. Animation's great, color design's great, character designs are really solid. Even like all the setup is really solid for the jokes, even though I just don't like the punchlines. This is kind of disappointing that I just don't feel very positively towards something that I can see has a lot of strengths to it. It's just, I don't find it funny. That's a shame.
Alright, Ninja and Assassin coming off the list. Next is Rock is a Lady's Modesty. This was another one of the big hype shows from this season about a rock band with a bunch of cute girls in it, potentially a bit edgier, probably, based on what I've seen of the show, and screen caps and stuff. And I think this is the only other big high dive show on the list for me. So let's see what it do.
Alright, that was a damn fun time. Just finished up all of Rock is a Lady's Modesty. Yeah, that was a real good show. I will admit it started off a little bit slow. That's one of my biggest critiques of the series is it takes the elements of the story that the characters find boring, like the noble life that our main character Ririsa is like sort of shunted into and like has to put up with in order to make her elevate her mother in status and stuff. It takes the elements that she finds boring and tedious, and the way they're presented in the show is often also boring and tedious sometimes. Not all the time, but definitely a lot. And so it just sort of comes off as like, how do I put this? It comes off as like, well, boring, I guess. It doesn't do a particularly good job at displaying those elements, except in the moments where Ririsa is like desperately trying to cover up her more commoner roots. Those moments are pretty fun, but when she is just acting like a noble lady, it gets and the scene goes on for too long, it gets a little tiresome at times. But fortunately, that's not the main focus of the series. The main focus of the series is the rock band stuff. This is a music series, sort of in the vein of Bocchi the Rock, but with a little bit more edge to it. A lot more edge to it, actually. This is a very vulgar show. I'm not sure exactly how accurate they are, but this is also a high dive show, and here's the thing. For as shitty as High Dive's actual streaming service is, I do like that they get a little colorful sometimes with their subtitles. Because Crunchyroll tends to not do that a lot of the time. But High Dive just goes full on like shit fuck motherfucker sometimes. And it's very gratifying, especially in this instance, since the show itself is so very vulgar. Almost in a try-hard kind of way. It gets a little bit almost artificial sometimes, but also these are teenagers with pent-up rage, so I guess I can excuse the try-hard nature of it because they are try-hard teenagers to an extent. It just gets a little too amateur George Carlin is a good way to describe it, I guess. At times, but still the dichotomy between the noble lady stuff and the crass rocker personalities is very funny and just really, I guess, just emotionally gratifying in a sense. Just the tension build up and then emotional release of sorts. And the characters doing that tension and release are also very fun. I love this, the duality of Ririsa being like, I have to be a nice, noble lady so that my mom can have a better life. Even though that mom definitely has some psychological issues that may be making it harder for Ririsa to live her life. Contrasted against her dad taught her how to play rock, and she really fucking likes rock, and she's going to play rock whether you tell her she can or not. And just the excitement and energy that she takes into that is so enrapturing. The same goes for the rest of the characters too. Otoha just being this fucking Mad Hatter drummer who I can only describe as someone who wants to drum so hard that she comes. That's another word they love to drop in the subtitles. They used cum like more than once. C-U-M, cum. Although it was C**M in the subtitles. Yeah, that was interesting. Sorry, I just realized that it's like, I think it's because of how the show presents it, because like some of the subtitles are censored and some of them aren't, but I think the censored ones line up with like non-diegetic censors in the show. Like sometimes they'll be going off on a curse-filled rant and then you'll hear like a snare drum hit in the middle of it, or like a guitar strum to censor the cuss word. And so I think those are the moments where it's like censored in the subtitles as well. Funny bit. Yes. Really liked the main cast for this show in general. The Shiro, this much this I'm better than all of you, why the fuck do I have to deal with this? And that gradually morphing into, oh, it's actually kind of fun to play with you people. And then we had Tina, this outwardly very prince-like Ojo-sama character. Or not Ojo-sama, not... What would the... Would it be Osama, I guess? The... Whatever... You know what I'm talking about. The prince-like lady. That's what I'm getting at. That trope. Where it's like that, but actually I have it actually cut to the iDubbbz clip of, I have crippling depression. This is a show of dichotomies. This is a show of extremes on both ends of the spectrum. And it works well for the most part. Even with I even ended up liking Ririsa's little stepsister a lot too, Alice. She's got very heavy like Miko vibes from Kaguya-sama. Very, very heavy on those vibes, and not just because she kind of looks like her. But aside from that, the main dish of this show, of course, is the rock and roll music and performances. And boy, I'm all over the place on this one because they are all full CG performances, and it's very obviously CG, like not particularly great CG except for the detailed like fretwork and the accuracy of the drums or the guitars or the keyboard and stuff. But the CG itself is not super good. It's not terrible. It's not terrible, but it is very much in your face, especially with Ririsa's design, because she's got these massive giant twin tails, and so they just look like CG noodles coming off of her head when she's in rock and roll mode. But fortunately, the camera work in this show is fucking insane. And it's just constantly moving, constantly doing fucking circles and flips and spinning all over the goddamn place. And it's controlled enough as well in that regard. It's not like random shit. It's very much controlled and directed how it works with the CG, or how it, quote unquote, films everything. How it captures everything. So that, combined with just the speed at which it does it, does a pretty decent job at masking, well, not masking, but sort of mitigating the effects that the CG would otherwise have. Like, if this was just shot pretty straightforward the whole time, it would be borderline unbearable because A, because it wouldn't be nearly as energetic as it was, but B, because the CG would just be so not fun to look at. But boy, does this show have some fucking energy. Especially in the performance scenes. Bold move to go with just instrumentals. Very bold move there. I know this is based on a manga, so it doesn't really matter with the fact that it is an anime now, because that's what the original story was. But it ended up working out very well sonically because the tracks are really fucking good, but also thematically in the sense of, like, we're not here to do hits. We're not here to play the hits. We're not here to pander. We are here to rock the fuck out. And I respect that. Mad respect for that. So, yeah, this was a really fun time. Would definitely recommend it. Wouldn't mind a second season, although I could definitely see a second season going off the rails with the story, because there's a lot of stuff that's just sort of building up to a point, a collapse point with the characters' relationships with different people. especially Ririsa's mom, who's just sort of. But yeah, this was fun. I wish the CG was better. Again, we are in a post Bocchi the Rock world, so it's not net. Now there weren't nearly as there were way more performances in Rock Lady than there were in Bocchi, so I can see how the difference comes up there. And this is also a what do you call it? A Bandai Namco production, so they just sort of do that by default now, I think, with some of their shows. But regardless, really fun time.
Alright. Rock Lady is complete. And we're going to put you in between the Lico Reco shorts and the Lupin OVA in the number 11 spot with a strong 7. Could have been a little bit stronger, and I would have given it an 8, but still a good showing. Alright, before we jump into the next thing, I do want to point out, I forgot to add it in, but Shirohio got confirmed to be ending this season as well, and also another show that is ending this season is Alien Stage, which is a series of music videos, I believe. Technically Korean animation, I believe, but it is making its rounds in the anime community, and I've already made it so that I'm fine with like Chinese productions as well, with like Herbivorous Dragon, and so we're just going to throw Alien Stage in here at the end. But before we get to that, up next is The Two Perfect Saint. I've heard this one's like I think this is a isekai, maybe, or it's just a regular fantasy series. I know it's got a female protagonist, so let's see what this one's about.
Alright, we're kind of close to the end, but I still managed to get at least one unexpected finish in before the end of the season. I just finished The Two Perfect Saint, tossed aside by her fiancé, finds happiness in a new kingdom or something. I forget what the end title of this is, but is good. Is very compelling. Although I was very skeptical of it at first, because the first episode is just constant, like, cartoonishly evil people being shitty to our main character for no goddamn reason other than like jealousy and spite. And I was just like, this is so cartoonishly evil and like stupid. Why would anybody act like this ever? There's no way anyone would ever act like this. And then I was like, wait a minute. I live in America in 2025. Of course people would act like this. They've been acting like this for the past 6 months. And I was like, you know what? Fair. I'll write out the first episode to see what the rest of the show is like. And the rest of the show was very good. A little too... occasionally swings a little too hard in the opposite direction of just making our main character feel like super at home and welcome in the new country she finds herself in. Like, just swings a little too hard in the opposite direction, but I think that's sort of the point to it as well, of like, to convey to her, like, no, that's not okay for people to act like that. You were treated like fucking horribly your whole life, apparently. What the fuck? So I very much appreciate this show as sort of a... But for the record, this came out in the novels for this first started publishing in 2021. So this is not directly inspired by the American government right now, but it sure bears a lot of fucking similarities to it. Just unnecessary cruelty towards your enemies or people you just don't like just to prove a fucking point to show how powerful you are. Reckless spending on things that are entirely superfluous and only do and only serve to boost your like aesthetic image rather than actually helping people. Getting rid of people who are really fucking good at their jobs for the sake of budget cuts or financial gain or like saving face or making yourself look cool, then realizing that you actually needed those people to run your country, and then like trying to get those people to come back through some means or another. It's oh so very American. The kingdom of Jordania. I don't remember what the name of the original kingdom is, but it is oh so very American, and I'm like, oh no, this is bad. This is supposed to be my escapism, and I'm not escaping at all. Oh no. No, this is not an escapism type anime, except when it is. I would put this squarely in the subgenre of girl boss fantasies. Or I should say girl boss fantasy anime, because it is not necessarily just the fantasy of being a girl boss, but it's being a girl boss in a fantasy anime. Other select entries would be... This is more so in the isekai realm of things as well, like stuff like Maji Revo and The Executioner and Her Way of Life are other shows that spring to mind in this genre. Though this show in particular is... Two Perfect Saint is much less intense than those shows in terms of like the actual content of it. There's not really that many big battles until the very end when they face off against a big demon overlord. It's much more about Philia figuring out how to do her saint duties in this new kingdom, while also balancing with the fact that she actually has to start taking care of herself now. But also, it's split with another concurrently running plot of her younger sister Mia in the Old Kingdom going like, why did my sister just leave all of a sudden? There's no way she would leave and not tell me for no good reason. And then her finding out, oh, they just straight up sold my sister to another kingdom for petty profit. Now I'm going to make it my sole reason for living to bring everyone in this kingdom down to their fucking knees. So like that, I love that they have Mia there as sort of the venting aspect of the emotional vent for the show. Whereas like, Philia is far too nice and meek to just seek outright revenge on people, and is just sort of like, I just want to live in this kingdom now and have my life here. That's kind of just what I want to do right now. I'm not going to mess with the other kingdom at all anymore, except to protect my younger sister. Whereas the younger sister is like, I am going to fucking ruin all of you for what you did to my sister. So we have that emotional venting of frustration for the audience to be like, there we go, there's the catharsis that we're looking for. With episode 9 in particular being like the sort of culmination of that venting, where Julius, the prince who sold Philia off, tries to make his big play for power, and it just completely blows up in his fucking face. Through a lot of characters that we get to meet and see their sides of how the kingdom that they've sort of let Julius completely take over is falling apart, and how they feel bad about that and want to make amends for that. Whether it's the actual crown prince, Fernand, who's been like sort of sickly the whole time and like sort of used his sickliness as a means of like escaping responsibility. Because aside from like the girl bossy type stuff of like, okay, it's up for the men have completely fucking failed us. It's time to just take matters into our own hands. It also sort of shows like the other side of that, of like why some of the men in power have failed to do the right thing. Sometimes it's just out of pure greed and malice, like Julius or like Felia's father. And then sometimes it's just out of fear or complacence, like with Fernand, just sort of holing up in his room for a decade because it's just easier to live that way. Or out of just lack of awareness or lack of power, I guess, with the king sort of being bedridden for a while. But I love that we get this sort of mini character growth for Fernand, where it's just sort of like Mia gets him to be like, hey, you have a responsibility to this kingdom as well. And he's like, oh yeah, I kind of do. I will come out of my room now. Just this sort of wake up call of like, if you have power, you should fucking do something with it to make things better. But then also there's sort of the flip side of it with Felia, who's just sort of been her whole life constantly being told, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to fix everyone's problems. No, we're not going to be grateful to you. Fuck you, keep doing your job. And then suddenly she gets put into this new kingdom where it's like, you don't have to do everything. We have other people you can rely on. You can take a break sometimes. It reminds me a little bit of a sort of a organizing principle of sorts when you're like talking about like movement organizing. It's like, if you have made yourself indispensable, then you have failed at whatever you are doing. Because it's like, if the entirety of a organization's existence or like a government's existence or a movement's existence hinges on a single person, then that thing is destined to fail once that person is out of the picture. Whether that's like grassroots protest movements or certain political movements on the extremes, or even like more middle ground political movements. If you make one person completely indispensable, that movement's going to fail when that person is out of the picture. Which sort of shows the contrast between the new and old kingdoms, where it's like Filia's old kingdom, once she is sold off, immediately everything just starts going to shit immediately, because they have pinned the entirety of their strategy on her without even realizing it, and then just because she is so good at her job, they find her to be too arrogant and too uppity, even though that's very much not the case. And then, so, even once she leaves and they realize, oh god, Filia was holding up all of this, they end up, like, blaming her for everything that goes wrong afterwards, which is, again, so very American. It's the classic, like, it was the old administration's fault that things are going bad right now, not our fault. And then, or when things are going good, it's like, see, because it it was the past administration's thing that made this good, not the current one. Like, so very much sort of that vibe to it. Um, Aside from that, I really liked just a lot of the plethora of side characters for it. I liked Felia's new husbando that she finds in the New Kingdom, Prince Oswald. Um, I gotta admit, kind of hot. I was hoping for like we would get a little bit more romance in this season because this is technically listed as a romance, I believe, on Bell. But the little hints of it here and there that we got, I was pretty satisfied with. Just these very like squee kind of moments. Uh, yeah, it was good. I liked the plethora of different side characters, like the maids and butlers and such that attend to Philia. I really enjoyed all of the family drama that unfolded as we learn more about Philia's past and such. And this archdemon Asmodeus as sort of the ultimate avatar of selfish patriarchal desire to have the female that they want because they want them, and what other reason is there? Uh, it was a really solid thematic ending for this season. Um, so yeah, really appreciated all of the like narrative elements of the show. The one element of the show that I wasn't super like in love with, but I didn't dislike it, but I don't particularly love it as the visual elements. This is not a very strongly animated show, which is shocking because it's from Troika, and Troika is usually usually makes pretty decent looking stuff. I believe they were one of the earlier spin-offs of A1 Pictures, if I recall. They did stuff like All Noah Zero, and I believe they did Recreators. They did Miss Sakurako's Investigations or whatever, the Beautiful Bones thing, or whatever the name of that show was. I haven't seen them around for a while. I'm sure they've done stuff recently, but I don't know off the top of my head what they've done recently, because I just named a bunch of shows that are like more than half a decade old. Some of them being a decade old. I'm not sure what Troika has been doing in the meantime. I'll have to look that up afterwards, just because I'm curious now. I'm sure I'll remember it. But they're not known for like bad animation usually, or even like mediocre stuff. And this isn't a bad looking show. It's got really solid character designs that are pretty memorable. The color palette's really nice. It's very pastel-y, very pleasant to look at. It just doesn't move a whole lot, and it doesn't do a ton cinematically that's very interesting. A lot of panning shots, a lot of stills, a lot of medium shots, medium panning shots, medium still shots. A lot of stuff that I would complain about in the more recent seasons of Reslime. A lot of that. But the show itself, the narrative itself was much more interesting than more recent seasons of Reslime. Perhaps because everything wasn't a boardroom meeting. So, while I don't dislike the animation and art style, it was definitely lacking. It could definitely have done with a bit more. And that's really kind of all I have to say on that. But I really appreciated this show. It leaves off at a great spot to where I don't think it needs a second season. But I wouldn't mind a second season. I would appreciate more of this if there is enough to be adapted. I'm sure there is. But also as it stands, it wasn't an impressive adaptation to begin with, so I don't know what a second season would look like, but I am perfectly fine with where it ends. I'm very satisfied with what we got. It has a solid conclusion to its narrative and thematic story arc here. The one thing I will say as a side note, the one sort of impressive thing about its animation was, like, weirdly enough, its fire effects, because they're not like totally CG, but they're not completely 2D. I'm sure they are 2D, and it's just they're very interesting. They have a very interesting texture to them at times. I don't know. I found those very pretty looking. And also the shot. That was the one of the few bits of really strong cinematography in this is the book burning scene in it. I really appreciated, like, Philia being framed by this fire. It was good stuff. But yeah, this was definitely a big shocker for this season for me. Would definitely not have picked this up if I wasn't doing this show. I only saw a couple other people talking about it that I know. And they seem to like it a lot. So I'm glad I do this show so that I was able to pick up Two Perfect Saint.
Alright, Two Perfect Saint is complete. We're just going to scroll fairly high up on the list here. We're going to put you in the number 5 spot for now with a light 8. That might be a little high, but you know what? I had a damn good time with that one. I very much appreciate what it did. Alright, we're going to do one more end cap before we jump, or we're going to do one more show from the main list before we jump to our end caps, I should say, and it's going to be Welcome to Magical Girl Village, which I believe is a short, like a web short or a TV shorts. Haven't heard anyone talk about it, but let's give it a go.
Okay. That was fucking nothing. I watched the first episode of Welcome to Magical Girl Village, and it was only a minute long, and it was gag. It's a gag series, very much in the same vein of like Onara Goro, if you ever saw that. Shout out to like fucking 2016 or 2017, whenever the fuck that came out. It's not funny. I think the funny is supposed to come from the insanity and quick pace of it all, but it's not that insane, and the quick pace just kind of pisses me off. So after that, all it has is the kind of gross looking animation, and I don't really find that funny. I just find it off-putting. So no.
Alright, well that was a massive dud, unfortunately. But that means it is now time for the next end cap, which is My Hero Academia Vigilantes. You guys know that I am a big My Hero fan, but I actually dropped this manga like way long ago, like first when it came out in physical copies in the US, which was well over a decade ago at this point, I believe. So let's see if my opinion has changed or if the anime is better than the manga.
Well, I can't say I'm really surprised by this, but it is unfortunate that I only got 3 episodes into My Hero Academia Vigilantes. I read the first volume-ish of the manga for this a while ago, back when it first started coming out in physical copies in the West, which I believe was 2018. I think I actually read the first couple chapters even before that, when the scanlations were first coming out, probably like a year before that or something. And I didn't like it back then, but for very different reasons than why I didn't. Well, not very different reasons, but I have a different perspective on the reason why I don't like it now. The reason I didn't like it back then was because I was bordering on being a hardcore libertarian and anything about and it was one of the things about My Hero's world building that irked me at the time, because the hero licenses and such, don't bother probing any further for that, because I don't have any additional logic to that, much like hardcore libertarians in general. But the reason I don't like it now is, for as much as I love My Hero Academia, it's one of my favorite series, easily one of my favorite Shonen Jump series, it's also a series where you're best not looking too far into how the world building works, because if you start to ask too many questions, it starts to break down, which, conveniently, Horikoshi is smart enough to never bring up those questions in the show. For example, what happens with people who don't have hero licenses but still want to do hero work? What happens there? And it creates this very... I feel as though the premise for... sorry if I don't know if it's coming across in this, but ignore the music from coming from outside. I'm recording this on the 3rd of July right now, so it's Party City right now. Very fun times. Might go out and hang with them later. But anyway, what was I talking about? Fuck, what the fuck was I talking about? God damn it, I got distracted by mariachi music. It presents questions regarding that don't necessarily have a clean answer to them, in that it sort of presents a problem that doesn't really make sense. Maybe it's just because I'm coming at this from the American perspective, and I don't fully understand the Japanese perspective on it, but more so, B, I just completely fundamentally reject the Japanese perspective on it. If this is what the Japanese perspective is like, oh, we should wait for the heroes to show up before we take action, like, not even just from an American perspective, but from a community perspective. If you have the ability to stop something bad from happening, you should stop something bad from happening. Now, the question then becomes like, well, we're talking about the registration and regulation of quirks, in particular dangerous quirks at times. But in that sense, it's just a matter of, I guess, you could very accurately compare that to firearms in the U.S., which, man, that's a question. But, like, for as extreme left as I am now, I am also not anti-gun. So, in that sense, I'm just like, yeah, you should have something to defend yourself with if you have the... But again, that's another thing where, like, it doesn't fully translate as a good example of that, because, like, guns are more often than not a lethal force, and in the world of My Hero, quirks are not necessarily lethal forces. Very often they're just things that you can subdue villains with. So again, it's not a perfect analogy. My point is, the very fundamental premise of Vigilantes brings up more questions than the show is willing to answer, because rather than... maybe it dives into this at some point, but rather than dive into that, it starts to the show immediately gets distracted into doing episodic stories about how they're like protecting people in individual random villain attacks. This is another thing that kind of annoyed me about this show. This isn't necessarily a flaw, but it's just sort of we're doing this today. Japan and like sort of the Far East in general is extremely anti-drug. Like, they really don't like drugs over there at all. And so the way this show talks about, in Vigilantes, one of the big running plot points is that there's this drug called Trigger that's a quirk enhancer that enhances people's quirks and like sort of dilutes their ability to reason and stuff. And the way they talk about Trigger is the way that like people were fucking talking about pot during like the Reefer Madness era. Like, this is a drug. People are taking drugs. People are taking this drug. And like, yes, in this world, this drug is very obviously a problem, but it's just the way that it's written feels just so extremely heavy-handed with what it's doing. We're talking about drugs in general, and it's just so immensely heavy-handed about it. None of this really is the reason why I didn't like this show. They are reasons why, like, but they are ultimately very minor compared to the fact that I just don't care all that much about the characters in this show. I very quickly caught on to the fact that I was being distracted by a cute idol anime girl, and I was like, oh, cute girl, I wonder if she's interesting. Oh, I'm sure she'll get interesting, she's a cute anime girl. Nope. Doesn't matter how cute she is. Although it's very funny that like in the first episode they're like, you're the girl that like flashes her butt on the internet and stuff, like for her like idol dancing and stuff. And like, I don't remember how it's drawn in the manga, but in the anime, she has no ass. She is minus an ass. So it's like not titillating at all. So very funny that that's the thing that they latch onto about it. But I don't particularly care about I like that Koichi is like sort of a, in contrast to Midoriya, who's like this giant ball of nerves all the time. Koichi is just kind of chill. He doesn't get flustered by cute girls all the time. He doesn't like, he's not having, and again, I don't mind that like Midoriya has like these emotional outbursts all the time, whereas Koichi is just sort of like mostly chill about stuff, but it is like a nice contrast. I like that they didn't just make Midoriya again. That would have really put this story in the shitter for me. But I still don't find him particularly interesting, even like especially compared to the other two characters. I think Knuckle Duster has potential, but I'm just not interested enough in the story to really continue. And it looks fine. It actually finds an understatement. This is a pretty decent, this really solid a pretty solid looking show. It's the first Bones series in a hot minute that I've watched. I think it's the first Bones series since the last My Hero season from last year. I'm not entirely sure of that, but I think it is. So, nice to see more Bones again. They're really taking their time with it. But yeah, this was fine. What actually got me to drop it, though, was in the third... So, like, the main thrust of the Vigilantes premise is these pop-up villains, as they're calling them, come out of nowhere so fast that the heroes can't respond in time before they do something that could, like, severely injure someone or kill someone or so what. And so, that's sort of the premise of being a vigilante, being there to be like, we can pop up before the heroes get here in order to protect people, which, a good idea. Like, not just for the story, but in terms of having a community in general, you should have people around where, like, the if it takes the cops forever to get where you are, it would be good for a community to have people who can protect you when they take forever. And then in episode 3, the heroes just show up right away when a bunch of villains are on the loose. Like, they just throw everybody out. The fucking Endeavor shows up. Cementos shows up. Or not Cementos, the construction guy. Midnight shows up. Fucking All Might shows up. And it's just like, well, there goes the entire premise of the show. So yeah. That was very annoying, and so I was just like, well, I already wasn't... I wouldn't say that I wasn't enjoying it, or I wouldn't say that I didn't... I wouldn't say that I didn't enjoy it. Like, it was perfectly serviceable. The chemistry between the three leads is pretty solid, if very corny and, like, tropey at times. And again, Pop Step is very cute. Gotta admit that. This would be just, like, very passive entertainment for me. Just being like, this is mildly entertaining, but I don't feel like I'm really engaging with it. It is not engaging me with it in a way that I feel satisfied with. So, unfortunately, I just don't feel like watching another 10 episodes of it. And especially, they just announced the second season of it. Definitely don't feel like watching that. So, guess I'll just stop here.
Alright. My Hero Vigilantes is unfortunately coming off the list, getting dropped. What a shame.